I'm Isabella Izzy Rossi, and I'm stuck in a childhood betrothal. My fiancé, Adrian Sterling, is a name on a legal document, a relic from a time when our families merged their businesses. We haven't seen each other since we were kids, and frankly, I'm not interested. He's rumored to be a cold, calculating businessman, the opposite of everything I want in a partner. So, I've decided to take matters into my own hands. I've joined an online dating site, hoping to find someone who sparks my interest, someone who gives me a valid reason to break off this ridiculous engagement. What I don't know is that Adrian, equally uninterested in this arrangement, has done the same. Once Upon a Cozy Night welcomes you to a world of mystery, magic, and just the right amount of drama. So snuggle up, get comfy, and if you love a good story, don't forget to subscribe, because this next tale? Oh, it's one for the books. Yukio traced her fingers over a fresh journal, eyes gleaming with anticipation. Now this, she murmured. This is a story worth reading. With a satisfied smile, she flipped open the cover, eager to devour a new tale of love. Let's begin. My name is Isabella Rossi, but everyone calls me Izzy. I'm a software developer, a bit of a tech geek, and currently, a very reluctant fiancé. My betrothal to Adrian Sterling is a relic from the past, a dusty contract signed by our parents when we were kids. It was a business deal disguised as a promise, a way to solidify the merger of our family's companies. The problem is, I haven't seen Adrian since I was 10, and from what I've heard, he's become everything I despise. A cold, calculating businessman, obsessed with power and wealth. He's rumored to be a heartless shark in the corporate world, the kind of guy who would foreclose on an orphanage without batting an eye. Frankly, the thought of marrying him makes my skin crawl. I'm not some damsel in distress waiting for a Prince Charming to rescue me. I'm a strong, independent woman with my own dreams and ambitions. I want a partner, not a corporate overlord. I want someone who makes me laugh, someone who shares my passion for coding, someone who appreciates a good pizza and a cheesy sci-fi movie. Adrian Sterling is definitely not that guy. So, I've decided to take matters into my own hands. I've joined an online dating site, using a pseudonym, of course. I'm not looking for anything serious, just a distraction, a way to prove to myself and my parents that I have options. I need a valid reason to break off this ridiculous engagement, something that doesn't involve a messy family feud. A charming, handsome, and utterly unsuitable boyfriend seems like the perfect solution. I've created a profile with a few carefully chosen pictures and a witty bio that highlights my love for coding and my disdain for arranged marriages. I'm hoping to attract someone who shares my sense of humor and my independent spirit. Someone who understands the absurdity of my situation and is willing to play along. The responses have been interesting. There's the guy who claims to be a time traveler, the aspiring poet who only communicates in haiku, and the self-proclaimed alpha male who keeps sending me shirtless selfies. It's a jungle out there. But then there's Alex. His profile is intriguing, his bio witty and intelligent. He's a software engineer, just like me, and he seems to share my passion for all things tech. We've been chatting for a few weeks, and I'm starting to look forward to our online conversations. He's smart, funny, and surprisingly insightful. He gets my jokes, he understands my frustrations, and he even appreciates my love for cheesy sci-fi movies. He's everything Adrian isn't. He's everything I want in a partner. He's perfect. Or at least he seems to be. I haven't met him in person yet, but we've agreed to have a virtual date next week. I'm nervous, excited, and a little bit guilty. I know this is just a game, a way to escape my reality. But a part of me can't help but wonder. What if? What if Alex is the real deal? What if he's the reason I've been searching for? What if he's the key to my freedom? My fingers hovered over the keypad, a mix of excitement and trepidation bubbling in my stomach. Tonight was the night. My first real conversation with Alex. We had been chatting online for weeks, exchanging witty banter and sharing our deepest thoughts and dreams as Iris and Alex. But tonight was different. Tonight, I would finally hear his voice. We had agreed to a simple phone call, a more personal connection than just typed messages on a screen. It felt both exciting and slightly terrifying. I had built up such an image of him in my mind, based on his messages and his online persona as Iris. What if his voice didn't match my expectations? What if the connection wasn't as strong when we talked in real time? I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this was just a phone call, a casual conversation. It wasn't a real date. It wasn't a commitment. It was just a way to explore my options, to gather intel for my grand escape from my engagement to Adrian. The phone rang, startling me. I snatched it up, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hello," I said, trying to sound casual, nonchalant. "Iris." His voice was deep, warm, and instantly captivating. It sent a shiver down my spine. "It's Alex." "Hi, Alex," I replied, my voice a little breathless. We started talking, the conversation flowing easily, just like our online chats as Iris and Alex. His voice was even more charming than I had imagined, filled with humor and intelligence. He had a way of making me feel comfortable, of putting me at ease. He asked me about my day, my work, my dreams. He listened attentively, making me feel seen and heard. We talked for hours, the time flying by. We discovered we had so much in common, not just our passion for coding, but also our love for cheesy sci-fi movies, our shared disdain for office politics, and our similar sense of humor. He made me laugh, he made me think, and he made me feel connected. He told me about his work as a software engineer, his challenges, his triumphs, his dreams of starting his own company someday. He was ambitious, driven, and passionate about what he did. But he was also down-to-earth, humble, and genuinely kind. He was the kind of person I could see myself spending my life with. As the call drew to a close, I felt a pang of disappointment. I didn't want the conversation to end. I wanted to keep talking, to keep learning about him, to keep feeling this connection. "I had a wonderful time, Iris," he said, his voice warm and sincere. "I'd love to do this again." I smiled, my heart fluttering. "Me too, Alex. I'd really like that." We said our goodbyes, and I hung up the phone, a sense of giddiness washing over me. I had met someone. Someone who understood me, someone who made me laugh, someone who made me feel alive. Someone who was everything Adrian wasn't. I couldn't wait to tell my best friend, Yukio, about Alex. She had been so supportive of my online dating escapades, always encouraging me to keep trying, to keep searching for the right guy. She would be thrilled to hear that I had finally found someone who sparked my interest. As I drifted off to sleep that night, my mind was filled with thoughts of Alex. He was everything I had been looking for. He was the perfect reason to break off my engagement to Adrian. He was perfect. Or so I thought. Adrian paced his office, phone pressed to his ear, a wide grin plastered across his face. Iris was even more captivating on the phone than he had imagined. Her voice was like a melody, her laughter infectious. They had talked for hours, the conversation flowing effortlessly from coding challenges to their shared love for vintage sci-fi films. He had never felt so connected to someone so understood. It was as if they were two halves of the same soul, finally finding their way back to each other. He had been hesitant to initiate the phone call, worried that the magic of their online connection might be lost in the transition to real-time conversation. But his fears had been unfounded. If anything, their bond had deepened, their connection strengthened. He had discovered a playful side to her, a mischievous glint in her voice that made his heart race. He had been careful not to reveal too much about himself, sticking to his online persona, Alex. He wanted to keep things separate, to protect this budding romance from the complications of his real life, his arranged marriage to Isabella Rossi. He had only met Isabella a handful of times, mostly at stuffy family gatherings. She was quiet, reserved, and seemed completely uninterested in him. He had always assumed she felt the same way about their arranged marriage as he did. That it was a ridiculous relic of the past, a business deal masquerading as a betrothal. But Iris, the woman he was talking to on the phone, was different. She was vibrant, witty, and full of life. She challenged him, she made him laugh, and she made him feel alive. He couldn't imagine his life without her now. He had to find a way to break off his engagement to Isabella Rossi, to pursue this real connection, this undeniable spark. He had even started to think about how he could use this online romance to his advantage. If he could find a way to break off his engagement to Isabella without causing a family war, he would be free to pursue Iris. It was a long shot, but it was a plan. He smiled to himself, imagining the look on his parents' faces when he told them he had found someone else. They would be shocked, of course, but they couldn't argue with true love, could they? And Iris was definitely someone special. He glanced at his watch. It was getting late. He had a busy day ahead of him, but he couldn't shake the feeling of excitement, the anticipation of his next conversation with Iris. He had a feeling that this online romance was about to become something more, something real, something that would change his life forever. Little did he know, Iris was about to turn his world upside down in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. The charity gala shimmered with a forced gaiety that did little to lift my spirits. I was surrounded by a sea of faces, all smiles and polite conversation, yet I felt utterly alone. My phone vibrated in my clutch bag. A new message from Alex. He had sent me a silly meme about a cat stuck in a cardboard box, and I couldn't help but giggle, the sound muffled by the polite chatter around me. Isabella, darling, you seem distracted, Mrs. Vanderwoodson, a society matron with a penchant for gossip and Botox, remarked, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Is something amiss? I plastered a smile on my face, tucking my phone back into my bag. Not at all, Mrs. Vanderwoodson, I lied. Just admiring the floral arrangements. She gave me a dubious look, her lips pursed. Indeed, she said, her voice dripping with skepticism. Well, do try to mingle, darling. There are some very eligible bachelors here tonight. I nodded politely, my gaze drifting back to my phone. Eligible bachelors held no interest for me. My mind was occupied by a certain software engineer with a penchant for cheesy jokes and a captivating voice. I excused myself from Mrs. Vanderwoodson's watchful eye, and slipped away to a quieter corner of the ballroom, where I could indulge in my online conversation with Alex. He had sent me another message, this time a link to a song that reminded him of me. I clicked on it, the melody filling my ears, a soft romantic tune that made my heart flutter. He was so thoughtful, so attuned to my emotions. I couldn't help but compare him to Adrian. The contrast was stark. I typed a quick reply, thanking him for the song and sharing a silly anecdote about my day. He responded immediately, his message filled with warmth and humor. I felt a smile spread across my face, a genuine smile that reached my eyes. I was falling for him, I realized. Falling hard. But the reality of my situation quickly brought me back to earth. I was engaged. The thought was a cold splash of reality. I sighed, tucking my phone back into my bag. I had to find a way out. Alex was the key. The boardroom buzzed with the energy of a high-stakes negotiation. Adrian sat at the head of the table, his expression impassive, his gaze fixed on the opposing team. He was a master of the corporate game, a shark in a tailored suit. But beneath his cool exterior, his mind was elsewhere. His phone vibrated in his pocket, a new message from Iris. He excused himself from the meeting, stepping out into the hallway to read her message. She had sent him a funny meme about a dog chasing its tail, and he couldn't help but chuckle, the sound echoing in the empty hallway. He shook his head, surprised by his own reaction. He was in the middle of a crucial negotiation, millions of dollars at stake, and yet, all he could think about was Iris and her witty messages. He typed a quick reply, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He couldn't wait to hear back from her, to continue their conversation, to lose himself in her world. He had never felt this way about anyone before. The thought of Isabella Rossi, his fiancé, was a distant, vaguely unpleasant echo. He glanced at his watch. The meeting was still going on. He had to get back in there, but he couldn't shake the feeling of excitement, the anticipation of his next conversation with Iris. He had a feeling that this online romance was about to become something more, something real, something that would change his life forever. He tucked his phone back into his pocket, a small smile playing on his lips. He was distracted, yes, but it was a welcome distraction. For the first time in a long time, he felt hopeful. Back in the boardroom, Adrian resumed his role as the ruthless negotiator, his focus sharp, his strategies calculated. But even as he sparred with the opposing team, a part of his mind remained with Iris, with the witty banter and the shared laughter. He couldn't wait to talk to her again, to lose himself in her world, to forget about the pressures of his real life, the expectations of his family. Unbeknownst to both of them miles away, Isabella was experiencing the same sense of distraction, the same pull towards her online connection. As she navigated the charity gala, her mind was filled with thoughts of Alex, his warm voice, his thoughtful messages, the way he made her feel seen and understood. She was falling for him, hard, and the reality of her engagement to Adrian felt like a distant, unpleasant dream. They were both living in two separate worlds, their online personas a refuge from the constraints of their real lives. They were both seeking connection, seeking escape, seeking something more. And they were both unknowingly on a collision course, their online romance destined to intersect with their real-life obligations, their carefully constructed plans about to unravel in ways they could never have imagined. The stage was set for a dramatic collision, a clash of identities, and a revelation that would change everything. The scent of old paper and freshly brewed coffee filled the air. I loved browsing bookstores, losing myself in the stacks, discovering hidden gems. It was my escape, a world away from the pressures of work, the awkwardness of family dinners, and the looming reality of my engagement to Adrian. I was searching for a rare first edition of a classic sci-fi novel, a gift for Alex, who had mentioned it in one of our online chats. He had a quirky sense of humor, and I knew he would appreciate the gesture. I wandered through the aisles, my fingers trailing along the spines of the books, my mind drifting to Alex. We had been talking online for weeks now, and I was completely smitten. He was everything Adrian wasn't: kind, funny, intelligent, and genuinely interested in me. He made me feel seen, heard, and appreciated. He was the perfect reason to break off my engagement. As I rounded a corner, my eyes scanning the shelves, I bumped into someone. Hard. A stack of books tumbled to the floor, scattering across the carpet. "Oh, I'm so sorry," I exclaimed, bending down to gather the fallen books. "No worries," a deep voice replied. I wasn't paying attention either. I looked up to see a man with broad shoulders and a mop of unruly brown hair. He was wearing a casual t-shirt and jeans, his expression apologetic. He looked familiar, but I couldn't quite place him. We both knelt on the floor, collecting the scattered books. His fingers brushed against mine, sending a jolt of electricity through me. I looked up at him, my heart skipping a beat. He had kind eyes, a warm smile, and a certain familiarity. "Have we met before?" I asked, my voice slightly breathless. He chuckled. "I don't think so. I'm Adrian." My heart sank. Adrian. My fiancé. What were the odds? Of all the bookstores in the city, I had to bump into him here now. "Isabella," I replied, my voice cool and formal. He nodded, his gaze lingering on my face for a moment too long. "It's nice to finally meet you," he said, his voice surprisingly warm. I forced a smile. "Likewise." We finished gathering the books, and he handed me the stack I had dropped. "Here you go," he said, his eyes twinkling. "Looks like you have good taste in literature." I glanced at the books he was holding. They were all classic sci-fi novels, the same genre that Alex loved. "Thank you," I said, a flicker of suspicion crossing my mind. He smiled. "Maybe we could discuss them sometime," he suggested. "I'm a big fan of sci-fi myself." I hesitated. I didn't want to get involved with Adrian, not even in a casual conversation about books. He was my fiancé, and I was trying to break off our engagement. Getting to know him better would only complicate things. "I'm a little busy at the moment," I said, trying to sound polite but distant. He nodded, his smile fading slightly. "Of course. Maybe some other time." He turned to leave, but then he paused, his gaze lingering on my face. "It was nice meeting you, Isabella," he said, his voice sincere. "You too, Adrian," I replied, forcing another smile. He walked away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had seen him before, that he was more than just my fiancé. There was something familiar about him, something intriguing. But I couldn't put my finger on it. I tucked the books into my bag, my mind still reeling from the unexpected encounter. I had bumped into Adrian, my fiancé, the man I was trying to avoid. And he had been nice. Surprisingly nice. He had even shared my love for sci-fi novels. It was a strange coincidence. Or was it? I shook my head, dismissing the thought. It was just a chance encounter. Nothing more. I had to focus on Alex, on my online romance, on my plan to break off my engagement. Adrian was just a distraction, a reminder of the life I was trying to escape. And I couldn't let him get in the way of my happiness. The bookstore encounter with Adrian lingered in my mind. It was brief, seemingly insignificant, yet it left me feeling unsettled. He had been surprisingly pleasant, even sharing my interest in sci-fi novels. It was a far cry from the cold, calculating businessman I had imagined him to be. That image, the ruthless businessman, was the one I'd clung to for years, a convenient justification for my dislike of our arranged marriage. It made it easy to dismiss him, to categorize him as the antithesis of everything I wanted in a partner. But the man I'd met at the bookstore, he didn't fit that mold. He was charming, engaging, familiar. And that familiarity, that sense of connection was deeply disturbing. It threatened the carefully constructed wall I'd built between us, the wall that allowed me to pursue my online romance with Alex guilt-free. I remembered the first time I'd really seen him, not as a child at some stuffy family gathering, but as a young man. It was at some charity event a few years ago. He'd been giving a speech, something about corporate social responsibility. I'd been struck by his confidence, his poise. And I had to admit his presence. He was handsome, undeniably so. But I'd quickly dismissed it as superficial, focusing instead on the rumors of his ruthless business dealings. After leaving the bookstore, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been too quick to judge Adrian. It wasn't fair to base my opinion on rumors and childhood impressions. So, I did a little digging. I searched for him online, curious to see what I could find. Articles about his business ventures, his philanthropic work. Even some surprisingly candid photos. He was successful, influential, and charitable. It was a far cry from the heartless shark I'd imagined. Had I been too quick to judge? Maybe. But the timing was suspicious. Was he trying to impress me? Was this sudden charm just an act? I pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on Alex. He was my escape, my confidant. Our online connection was a lifeline. He made me laugh, he saw me. He was my hope. Later that evening, I confided in Yukio over a shared bottle of wine. I met Adrian today, I told her, swirling the wine in my glass. At the bookstore. And he was actually kind of nice. Yukio raised an eyebrow. Nice? As in, actually nice, or I'm trying to be polite because our parents are watching nice. Actually nice, I admitted. We even talked about sci-fi. He knew what I meant when I referenced Dune. Yukio chuckled. Well, that's certainly a start. Maybe he's not the corporate monster you've built him up to be. Maybe, I said, but the word felt hollow. It doesn't change anything though. We're still engaged. And I'm still talking to Alex. But the certainty in my voice was wavering. Speaking of, Yukio said, a mischievous glint in her eye. How are things with your mystery man? I smiled, thinking of our witty online exchanges, the way he made me feel. He's great, I said. So, Yukio said, leaning forward, what's the plan? How are you going to get out of this engagement? I sighed. I don't know, I admitted. It's all so complicated. It was always going to be complicated, but Adrian's unexpected charm had just added another layer. Well, Yukio said, taking a sip of her wine. Maybe it's not as complicated as you think. Maybe. Just maybe. There's more to Adrian than meets the eye. I scoffed. You sound like my mother, I said. Yukio shrugged. Just saying. Sometimes, the person you're looking for is right in front of you. I rolled my eyes. Yeah, right, I said. And sometimes, arranged marriages actually work out. Yukio laughed. Stranger things have happened, she said. I didn't want to admit it, but a tiny seed of doubt had been planted. The familiar stranger, Adrian, was starting to complicate things. And I had a feeling that my carefully constructed plans were about to unravel. Adrian leaned back in his office chair, the city lights twinkling outside his window. He had just finished another online chat with Iris, and while the warmth of their connection still lingered, a nagging unease had begun to creep in. He replayed their conversation in his mind, the witty banter, the shared laughter, the undeniable spark. Iris was everything he thought he wanted in a partner. Intelligent, passionate, and refreshingly real. She was the antithesis of his childhood fiancé, Isabella Rossi. Or was she? The thought brought him back to the bookstore. The encounter, though brief, had been unsettling. He had always considered Isabella a distant figure, a name on a legal document, a relic of a business arrangement. He had built up this image of her in his mind. A cold, aloof woman, as uninterested in him as he was in her. But the woman he'd met browsing the sci-fi section, his section, was different. Engaging. She had a warm smile, a quick wit, and a genuine interest in their shared passion for classic novels. It was a jarring discovery, a crack in the carefully constructed wall he had built between his real life and his online romance. It was also unsettlingly familiar. Too familiar. He frowned, pushing the thought away. He couldn't afford to be confused. He had a plan, a carefully calculated plan to break off his engagement and pursue Iris. He had to stay focused, to keep his online romance separate from his real life. But the bookstore encounter had planted a seed of doubt in his mind. What if Isabella wasn't the cold, unapproachable woman he had assumed her to be? What if there was more to her than he had initially thought? What if his carefully constructed plan wasn't so simple after all? He dismissed the thought as quickly as it came. It was just a coincidence, a fleeting moment of connection. Isabella was his fiancée, and Iris was the woman he was falling for. They were two distinct individuals, two separate worlds. He couldn't allow this accidental encounter to complicate things. But the nagging feeling persisted. The feeling that he'd seen that spark of warmth, that hint of intelligence, before. Not just online. He glanced at his watch. He had a busy day ahead of him. A series of meetings and negotiations. He needed to focus, to put his plan into action. He would find a way to break off his engagement to Isabella Rossi, to be with Iris. He was determined to make it happen. But the unsettling familiarity of their bookstore encounter lingered in the back of his mind. A nagging feeling that something was about to change. He just didn't know what. A notification popped up on his phone, a reminder about the upcoming family dinner with the Rossis. He felt a familiar dread creep into his stomach. These dinners were always a tedious affair, filled with forced pleasantries and veiled business discussions. He had been dreading this one even more than usual, knowing that Isabella would be there, a constant reminder of the life he was trying to escape. Or was it? He wasn't so sure anymore. He sighed, pushing the thought away. He couldn't avoid the dinner. It was a necessary evil, a part of the charade he had to maintain until he could figure out a way to break off the engagement without causing a family war. He just had to get through it, play his part, and hope that Iris would be online later that night, ready to whisk him away to their virtual world of shared laughter and genuine connection. He needed that escape more than ever now. But what if his escape was closer than he thought? The Rossi mansion exuded an air of old money and understated elegance. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, casting a warm glow on the polished mahogany furniture. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the hushed murmur of polite conversation. I felt out of place, a fish out of water in this world of privilege and tradition. I smoothed down my dress, a simple but elegant design that I hoped would make me look less like a software developer and more like well, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to look like. A fiancé, perhaps? The thought made me cringe. I was engaged to Adrian, a man I barely knew. Or rather, a man I thought I barely knew. My image of him had always been a caricature. The cold, calculating businessman. But after our bookstore encounter, and the research I'd done afterward, I wasn't so sure. He was successful, influential, and charitable. The man I'd met browsing sci-fi, the man I'd researched online. They didn't quite align with the image I'd carried for years. It was disconcerting. The family dinner was a torturous affair. My parents and Adrian's parents engaged in polite but pointed conversations about business, while Adrian and I sat in awkward silence, exchanging occasional forced smiles. He was charming, attentive, and every inch the perfect fiancé. He asked me about my work, my hobbies, my dreams. He listened intently, making me feel uncomfortable. It was as if he was trying to impress me, to win me over. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was all an act, a performance for the benefit of our families. A performance that was making it harder to maintain my carefully constructed dislike. My mind kept drifting to Alex, my online confidant, the man who made me laugh and made me feel seen. We had been talking online for weeks, sharing our dreams, our fears, our deepest secrets. I was falling for him, hard. He was my hope. As the dinner progressed, I felt more and more trapped. I was surrounded by people who expected me to marry Adrian, to become a part of their world, their business empire. They didn't know about Alex, about the connection I had found online. They didn't know that I was planning to escape, to forge my own path, to find my own happiness. Or at least I thought I was. I glanced at Adrian, who was engaged in a lively conversation with my father. He looked relaxed, confident, every inch the successful businessman. He was so different from the man I had met at the bookstore, the man who had shared my love for sci-fi. It was as if there were two different versions of him, and I couldn't reconcile them in my mind. And that was terrifying. The dinner finally came to an end, and I breathed a sigh of relief. I couldn't wait to escape, to go home, to connect with Alex online. He was my refuge, my escape. But as I said goodbye to Adrian, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. The comfortable distance I had maintained between him and Alex was starting to blur, and I had a feeling that my carefully constructed plans were about to unravel. The quiet hum of my laptop fan was a welcome contrast to the forced gaiety of the family dinner. I had finally escaped the Rossi mansion, the polite conversations, the pointed glances, the suffocating expectation of my impending marriage to Adrian. I was back in the comfort of my apartment, surrounded by my books, my music, my own space. And most importantly, I was ready to connect with Alex. I had been thinking about him all evening, his warm voice, his witty messages, the way he made me feel seen and understood. He was my escape, my confidant, the man who made me laugh and made me dream. He was everything Adrian wasn't. Or was he? The thought crept into my mind, unbidden. The image of Adrian at the bookstore, browsing the sci-fi section, sharing a brief but surprisingly engaging conversation about our shared love for classic novels. It was a jarring contrast to the cold, calculating businessman I had imagined him to be. It was as if there were two different versions of him, and I couldn't reconcile them in my mind. The glow of the laptop screen illuminated my face, reflecting the excitement bubbling within me. Alex had just suggested we take our relationship to the next level. A real-life meeting. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of anticipation and nervousness swirling within me. I had been talking to him online for weeks, sharing my deepest thoughts and dreams, falling head over heels for his wit, intelligence, and genuine kindness. But meeting him in person was a whole new level of commitment, a step towards a future I had only dared to dream about. I know it's a big step, he had messaged, but I feel like we have something special, Isabella. I want to meet you, to see your smile in person, to hear your laughter without the filter of a screen. His words had melted my heart. He was so thoughtful, so considerate. He understood my hesitation, my fear of taking this leap of faith. But he also made me realize how much I wanted this, how much I craved a real connection, a tangible relationship. I'd like that, Alex, I had replied, my fingers trembling as I typed the words. I'd really like that. We had agreed to meet at a cozy cafe near the park, a neutral location that felt safe and comfortable. I had spent the rest of the day agonizing over what to wear, finally settling on a simple but elegant dress that I hoped would make me feel confident and beautiful. I wanted to make a good impression, to show him the real me, the woman behind the screen. But as the day of the meeting approached, a nagging doubt crept into my mind. What if he wasn't who I thought he was? What if the magic of our online connection didn't translate to real life? What if he was disappointed by the real me, the woman who was less witty, less confident, less perfect than the persona I had created online? I pushed the thoughts away, reminding myself that Alex had accepted me for who I was, flaws and all. He had seen my vulnerabilities, my insecurities, and he had still chosen me. He had made me feel seen, heard, and appreciated. And that was all that mattered. As I got ready for the meeting, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement, a thrill of anticipation. I was about to meet the man of my dreams, the man who had captured my heart without even seeing my face. And I had a feeling that this meeting was going to change my life forever. The cafe buzzed with a low hum of conversation and the clatter of coffee cups. I sat at a small table near the window, my heart pounding in my chest. I had arrived early, eager to secure a good spot, a place where I could see the entrance and anticipate Alex's arrival. I had been agonizing over what to say, how to act, how to bridge the gap between our online connection and this real-life encounter. I glanced at my watch. He was late. A wave of panic washed over me. What if he had changed his mind? What if he had realized that I wasn't who he thought I was? What if he had decided to stand me up? Just as I was about to give up hope, the cafe door opened, and a tall, imposing figure walked in. He was dressed in a sharp suit, his hair perfectly styled, his expression familiar. My heart skipped a beat. Then another. It was Adrian. He strode towards me, his eyes fixed on my face. I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. What was he doing here? Had he followed me? Was he here to confront me about my online dating escapades? Isabella, he said, his voice cool and formal. Fancy meeting you here. I forced a smile, trying to maintain my composure. Adrian. What a surprise. He sat down across from me, his gaze lingering on my face for a moment too long. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. I shrugged, trying to sound nonchalant. "Just meeting a friend." He nodded, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "A friend, huh?" I felt a blush creep up my cheeks. "Yes, a friend," I insisted, my voice slightly defensive. He chuckled. All right. I won't pry." We sat in awkward silence for a few minutes, the tension between us palpable. I glanced at my watch again. Alex was now very late. I was starting to feel foolish, sitting here waiting for a man who might not even show up. So Adrian began, breaking the silence. "How's work?" "Busy," I replied, keeping my answer short. Small talk felt incredibly awkward, especially given the circumstances. "Right," he said. "Software development. Always in demand." He paused. "I was reading an article the other day about AI in coding. Fascinating stuff." I nodded, not really wanting to delve into a technical discussion. "Yeah, it's evolving quickly." Another silence descended. "And your family?" he asked, then immediately winced slightly. "How are they?" "Fine," I said. "Same as always." "Right," he mumbled. "Well, good." The awkwardness was thick enough to cut with a knife. I took a deep breath, deciding to take a chance. "Adrian," I said, my voice firm, "there's something I need to tell you." He looked up at me, his expression curious. "What is it, Isabella?" I want to break off our engagement," I blurted out, the words tumbling out of my mouth before I could stop them. He stared at me, his eyes widening in surprise. "What?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't love you," I continued, my voice trembling slightly. "And I don't think you love me either. This engagement was a mistake, a childhood betrothal that never should have happened. We're not compatible, we're not meant to be." He remained silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on my face. I could see the recognition in his eyes, the understanding, the shared awkwardness. I understand," he said finally, his voice hoarse. I've been feeling the same way." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. He understood. He didn't fight back, he didn't argue. He simply accepted it. So I began trying to lighten the mood. "How do you think we should tell our parents? This is going to be awkward." Adrian gave a small, almost sad smile. "I've been giving that some thought. Perhaps we could present a united front? Explain that we've realized we're better as friends." "That sounds reasonable," I agreed. "Though I doubt they'll be easily convinced." We sat in silence for a few more minutes, the weight of our decision settling between us. Then, Adrian stood up. "Well," he said, a slightly strained smile on his face, "I should probably get going. I have a meeting myself." He turned and began walking towards the cafe exit. He reached the door, paused, and pulled out his phone. He glanced at it, then dialed a number. He held the phone to his ear, waiting. His expression shifted, a warm smile spreading across his face. Just then, my phone buzzed in my bag. I pulled it out, my hands trembling. The caller ID displayed a familiar name. Alex. I hesitated, a strange premonition washing over me. "Hello," I heard Adrian say, his voice warm and friendly, just as I had heard it countless times before. "Iris? It's Alex. I'm here at the cafe. Where are you?" My breath hitched. "Iris?" He said. "Iris? My name?" The sound of my name, spoken in that familiar voice, seemed to echo through the cafe, a strange sense of recognition washing over me. Why does that voice sound so familiar? I thought, my mind racing. I stared at Adrian, my mind reeling. "It can't be." "Iris," Adrian said, his voice slightly louder now, as if he was trying to be heard over the cafe's ambient noise. "Iris? Are you here?" "It's Alex." That voice. It was familiar, achingly so. My mind froze. It couldn't be. Could it? I stared at him, my thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. "Iris," he repeated, his gaze now shifting, turning, scanning the cafe. He was looking for me? "I'm here," I whispered, my voice small and weak, barely audible. "Behind you." Adrian froze. He turned slowly, his eyes widening as they met mine. He looked down at the phone still clutched in his hand, then back up at me, his expression a mixture of disbelief and dawning realization. "It's you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are you serious?" I nodded, my throat tight. "It's me, Alex. It's me, Adrian." It felt so strange to say it aloud. Like two separate worlds colliding. He stared at me, his expression a mixture of shock, confusion, and something else. Relief? Recognition? He took a step closer, his eyes searching mine. I can't believe it," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "It's you. It's really you." I managed a small, shaky smile. "It's me," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I'm Iris." "I'm Isabella." He reached out and took my hands in his touch sending shivers down my spine. "Iris," he said, his voice filled with emotion. I don't know what to say." "There's not much to say," I replied, still reeling. "It's a lot to take in." He pulled me into a hug, his arms wrapping around me tightly. I buried my face in his chest, feeling the warmth of his body, the strength of his embrace. It was the most amazing, most surreal feeling in the world. And it was Adrian. We stood there for a long moment, holding each other, the weight of our revelation, the joy of our discovery, the promise of our future swirling around us. The shock was immense, a quiet, internal earthquake. It took a long time for the initial wave of disbelief to subside. We pulled apart slightly, our eyes meeting, a mixture of shock, amusement, and overwhelming affection reflected in their depths. "So," Adrian began, a small smile playing on his lips, "I guess this explains why we both have such a strong dislike for our fiancés." I chuckled, the tension finally easing. "It also explains why we both have such a great appreciation for cheesy sci-fi movies," I added, returning his smile. "And to think, we even had a breakup before we knew who the other was," I added, shaking my head in disbelief. He laughed. "That's almost unbelievable. All that easy camaraderie, all that shared laughter. While we were both dreading these awkward family dinners. We sat down again, the initial shock giving way to a comfortable silence. There was so much to talk about, so much to explain. We spent the next hour unraveling the mystery of our online connection, piecing together the clues, the coincidences, the near misses. We talked about our shared passion for coding, our mutual disdain for arranged marriages, our dreams for the future. We talked about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing easily, naturally, as if we had known each other forever. "So," Adrian said, his voice soft, "what does this mean for us?" I looked at him, my heart filled with hope. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I'd like to find out." He smiled, his eyes sparkling. "Me too." We decided to take things slow, to get to know each other in the real world, to build a relationship based on honesty, trust, and genuine affection. We agreed to have another date, a real date this time, no screens, no pseudonyms, just Isabella and Adrian. As we walked out of the cafe, hand in hand, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. We had found each other, not through a carefully arranged plan, but through a serendipitous online connection. We had fallen in love, not as Isabella Rossi and Adrian Sterling, the childhood betrothed, but as Iris and Alex, the online confidants. Adrian dropped me off at my apartment, a gentle peck on my cheek sealing our newfound connection. "See you on Thursday," he said, his eyes sparkling with warmth. "Text me when you're home," I replied, a wide smile spreading across my face. He nodded, squeezing my hand gently before turning to leave. I watched him go, my heart overflowing with happiness. Thursday couldn't come soon enough. Thursday arrived, and with it, a whirlwind of real-life dates with Adrian. We explored the city together, shedding our online personas and discovering new facets of each other with every shared laugh and stolen glance. We were like two pieces of a puzzle, fitting together perfectly, the edges we had once thought jagged and incompatible now slotting smoothly into place. As evening fell, we found ourselves at a cozy Italian restaurant, tucked away in a quiet corner booth. The aroma of garlic and basil filled the air, mingling with the soft murmur of conversation and the clinking of glasses. Adrian reached across the table, his hand finding mine. "Isabella," he said, his voice low and intimate, "these past few weeks have been incredible. I never imagined I could feel this way about someone." I squeezed his hand, my heart overflowing with warmth. Me neither, Adrian, I replied, my gaze locked with his. I feel like I've known you forever, and yet, I'm still discovering new things about you every day. He smiled, his eyes sparkling with affection. I feel the same way about you. You're amazing, Isabella. Smart, funny, beautiful. And you have terrible taste in pizza toppings. I laughed, playfully swatting his arm. Hey, pineapple on pizza is a culinary masterpiece. He chuckled, shaking his head. We'll have to agree to disagree on that one. We spent the rest of the evening lost in conversation, sharing our dreams, our fears, our hopes for the future. We talked about our families, our careers, our mutual love for cheesy sci-fi movies. We talked about everything and nothing, the hours melting away like snowflakes on a warm winter day. As the weeks passed, our relationship deepened, our bond strengthened. We were inseparable, spending every free moment together, exploring the city, trying new restaurants, attending concerts and art exhibitions. We were falling deeper in love with each day, our online connection blossoming into a real-life romance that was even more magical than we had ever imagined. One afternoon, while strolling through the park, hand in hand, Adrian turned to me, his expression serious. Isabella, he said, his voice filled with emotion. I know we haven't been together long, but I can't imagine my life without you now. I love you, Isabella. I love you more than words can say. My heart skipped a beat. I love you too, Adrian, I replied, my voice trembling slightly. I love you more than I ever thought possible. He leaned down and kissed me, a long, passionate kiss that sealed our love, our commitment, our future together. As we walked home that evening, hand in hand, we knew it was time to tell our families. We had found each other, not through a carefully arranged plan, but through a serendipitous online connection. We had fallen in love, not as Isabella Rossi and Adrian Sterling, the childhood betrothed, but as Isabella and Alex, the online confidants. And now it was time to declare our love to the world, to break free from the shackles of our past and embrace the future we had created together. We decided to tell our parents the following week, during one of our regular family dinners. We knew it wouldn't be easy. They had expectations, plans, business arrangements that hinged on our arranged marriage. But we were determined to fight for our love, to convince them that our happiness was worth more than any business deal. We arrived at the Rossi mansion, hand in hand, our hearts pounding with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. We were ready to face our families, to declare our love, to rewrite the script of our lives. We were ready to embrace the future, together. The Rossi mansion's dining room, usually a scene of polite chatter and hushed business discussions, crackled with a different kind of energy. My parents and Adrian's parents sat at the mahogany table, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and anticipation. Adrian and I sat side by side, our hands not clasped beneath the table, both of us nervously fidgeting. We had decided to make our announcement before dinner, to get it over with, to finally reveal the truth. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Mom, Dad, I began, my voice trembling slightly. Adrian and I have something to tell you. My mother smiled expectantly. What's up, darlings? Adrian cleared his throat, his posture stiff. It's about us, he said, his voice firm. The smiles on our parents' faces faltered slightly. They sensed the shift in the atmosphere, the seriousness in our tone. We, Adrian and I, began simultaneously, then stopped, glancing at each other nervously. I've fallen in love, we both blurted out at the exact same moment. A stunned silence filled the room. Our parents stared at us, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and confusion. With who? My father finally asked, his voice sharp. Adrian's parents echoed the sentiment with equally bewildered expressions. Adrian and I exchanged another nervous glance. With, I started, then hesitated. It's complicated, Adrian finished, his voice carefully neutral. A palpable wave of confusion washed over our parents. They looked at each other, then back at us, their brows furrowed. Complicated? My mother repeated, her voice laced with bewilderment. How can it be complicated? You're engaged. We met online, I blurted out. A stunned silence descended. You met? Online? My father's voice was incredulous. Yes, Adrian confirmed. We started seeing each other. Virtually. We felt a connection, a real connection. Our parents erupted. You are engaged. My father roared, slamming his fist on the table. To each other. Who is this other person you've been seeing? Adrian's father echoed his anger, his face flushed. Adrian and I exchanged a panicked glance. We had completely forgotten to mention the most crucial detail. It's still each other, I stammered. What? My mother's voice was filled with disbelief. We fell in love with each other, Adrian explained online. The room fell silent again, this time with a heavy dose of bewilderment. You fell in love with each other? Online? My father asked slowly, his voice laced with confusion. Yes, I confirmed. We used different names. We wanted to get to know each other without the pressure of our families, our history. We wanted to fall in love for who we are, not for who we're supposed to be. And you did, Adrian finished, looking at me with affection. Our parents remained silent for a long moment, processing this new information. So, my mother said slowly, you're saying you've been dating someone online, and that someone was each other? Yes, I confirmed. A small smile touched my father's lips. Well, he said, shaking his head in amusement, that's certainly a modern twist on an arranged marriage. And Adrian's father added, a hint of admiration in his voice, it seems you found a way to make it work. We have, Adrian said, taking my hand in his. And we're still engaged. We want to be married. But we wanted to tell you our way. We wanted you to understand how we fell in love. Our parents exchanged one last look, a mixture of relief, amusement, and genuine happiness in their eyes. We understand, my mother said, her voice warm. And we're happy for you both. We are, Adrian's father echoed. The tension in the room finally dissipated, replaced by a sense of celebration. Our parents had accepted our love, our unconventional romance, our decision to embrace our future together. They understood that our happiness was worth more than any business arrangement, any family obligation. We had declared our love, not just to each other, but to the world. And the world, or at least our little corner of it, had responded with acceptance, understanding, and even a touch of admiration. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Isabella Rossi and Adrian Sterling, or rather Isabella and Alex, were finally ready to face it, together, as a publicly, officially, and genuinely engaged couple. And the details of their online personas, the secret of their online identities, would remain their secret, for now. The weeks following our declaration were a whirlwind of happiness. Our families, initially shocked by the unconventional nature of our romance, had fully embraced our relationship. The awkwardness of family dinners was replaced by genuine warmth and laughter. The pressure of fulfilling expectations had lifted, replaced by a sense of shared joy and anticipation for our future. Adrian and I were in a blissful honeymoon phase, even before the wedding. We spent our days exploring the city, trying new restaurants, and still debating the merits of pineapple on pizza, and simply enjoying each other's company. We were no longer Isabella and Adrian, the names assigned to us by family obligation. We were Isabella and Alex, the online confidants who had fallen in love before they even knew each other's real names. And we were also Isabella and Adrian, the couple who had rediscovered their connection in the real world, solidifying a bond that was both familiar and brand new. One sunny afternoon, we found ourselves picnicking in the park, a checkered blanket spread out beneath a sprawling oak tree. The gentle breeze rustled the leaves, creating a soothing melody. We shared a basket of sandwiches and fruit, laughing and talking about everything and nothing. I still can't believe we pulled it off, I said, leaning back against the tree trunk, Adrian's arm wrapped around me. Our parents were so shocked. Adrian chuckled. They were. But they came around. They realized that our happiness is more important than anything else. It's funny, isn't it? I mused. We tried so hard to avoid each other, to escape this arranged marriage. And in the end, we fell in love anyway. It was fate, Adrian said, his eyes sparkling. Or maybe it was just really good coding skills. I laughed, playfully shoving him. Hey, my coding skills are excellent. I know, he said, pulling me closer. They're one of the many things I love about you. We shared a tender kiss, the world around us fading away. In that moment, it was just us, Isabella and Adrian, two people who had found their way back to each other, against all odds. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, we started talking about the future. We discussed our careers, our dreams, our plans for our wedding. We should probably start planning the wedding, I said, a hint of nervousness creeping into my voice. Adrian smiled. I know. It's a little daunting, isn't it? Yeah, I agreed. There's so much to do. The dress, the venue, the guest list. Don't worry, Adrian said, squeezing my hand. We'll do it together. We'll plan the perfect wedding, a celebration of our love story, a story that's as unique and unconventional as we are. I like that, I said, leaning my head on his shoulder. A unique and unconventional wedding. We spent the rest of the evening brainstorming ideas, throwing out suggestions, laughing at the more outlandish ones. We talked about a small, intimate ceremony with close friends and family. A celebration that reflected our personalities, our love for each other. As we walked home that night, hand in hand, I felt a sense of peace and contentment I had never experienced before. We had faced our families, declared our love, and now, we were ready to embark on the next chapter of our lives, together. The future was bright, filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a happily ever after that was all the more special because it was a love story we had written ourselves. The wedding planning was in full swing. A delightful mix of excitement and occasional stress. Adrian and I were determined to create a celebration that reflected our unique journey. A blend of tradition and our own quirky touches. We opted for a smaller, more intimate ceremony, inviting only our closest friends and family. The venue was a beautiful botanical garden, a lush oasis of greenery and vibrant flowers, a perfect backdrop for our romantic, slightly unconventional wedding. My dress was a dream, a flowing, elegant design that made me feel like a princess. It wasn't the traditional puffy white gown. Instead, it was a soft, blush-colored creation with delicate lace details, a perfect reflection of my personality. Adrian's suit was equally stylish, a dark gray ensemble that complemented my dress perfectly. We spent hours poring over wedding magazines, searching for inspiration, debating color schemes, and agonizing over the seating chart. We argued about the cake. Chocolate versus vanilla was a surprisingly contentious issue. The music, classic rock versus acoustic ballads, and the floral arrangements, peonies versus sunflowers. But even amidst the minor disagreements, there was always laughter, love, and a shared sense of joy. One afternoon, while we were visiting the botanical garden to finalize the ceremony details, we bumped into Mrs. Vanderwoodson, the society matron with a penchant for gossip and Botox. She was attending a luncheon at the garden's cafe, and upon spotting us, her eyes lit up with curiosity. Isabella. Darling. Adrian, she exclaimed, her voice booming across the patio. How wonderful to see you both. Planning the big day, I presume? We exchanged a polite smile. Yes, Mrs. Vanderwoodson, I replied. We're just finalizing the details. Well, do tell, she said, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. What kind of wedding are we talking about? A grand affair, I hope. It's going to be a smaller, more intimate ceremony, Adrian explained. Just close friends and family. Mrs. Vanderwoodson's smile faltered slightly. Oh, she said, her voice laced with disappointment. Well, I'm sure it will be lovely. She paused, her gaze lingering on my dress. That's an interesting choice for a wedding gown, she commented, her tone a mix of curiosity and thinly veiled disapproval. Thank you, I replied, trying to keep my voice polite. I love it. Mrs. Vanderwoodson gave me a dubious look. Her lips pursed. Well, as long as you're happy, darling, she said, her voice dripping with skepticism. That's all that matters. She gave us a perfunctory nod and then turned to leave, but not before whispering something to her companion, who then turned to look at us with a similar expression of thinly veiled disapproval. I sighed, feeling a wave of frustration wash over me. I knew that our unconventional wedding wouldn't please everyone, but I didn't expect such blatant judgment. Don't let her get to you, Adrian said, squeezing my hand. She's just old-fashioned. I know, I replied. It's just, I want our wedding to be perfect, and sometimes I worry that people will judge us. They might, Adrian said gently. But the only people whose opinions matter are us and the people we love. Everyone else can think what they want. His words comforted me, reminding me of what was truly important. Our wedding wasn't about pleasing others. It was about celebrating our love, our unique journey, our future together. We continued our wedding planning, focusing on the details that mattered most to us. We chose our music, our flowers, our cake. I won the chocolate versus vanilla debate. And we even managed to finalize the seating chart without any major arguments. As the wedding day drew closer, the excitement grew, mixed with a healthy dose of pre-wedding jitters. I couldn't wait to marry Adrian, to start our life together, to finally be his wife. But I was also nervous, worried that something might go wrong, that some unforeseen mishap would ruin our perfect day. Little did I know, a few minor mishaps were indeed brewing, ready to add their own unique twist to our unconventional wedding story. The wedding day dawned bright and beautiful, the sun shining through the stained glass windows of my childhood bedroom. A nervous flutter danced in my stomach, a mix of excitement and anticipation. Today was the day I would marry Adrian, the man I loved. All of him. The morning was a whirlwind of activity. Hairdressers, makeup artists, and bridesmaids swirled around me, transforming me into a blushing bride. My dress, a dream of blush-colored lace and delicate beading, hung on the wardrobe door, waiting. The bouquet of peonies, Adrian's favorite, sat on the vanity, their sweet scent filling the air. As I slipped into my dress, a wave of emotion washed over me. This was it. The day I'd dreamed of. But this wasn't the fairy tale I'd imagined as a child. This was a wedding born of an arranged engagement, a serendipitous online connection, and a love story that had defied expectations. A love story I almost missed. The ceremony took place in the botanical garden, a lush haven of greenery and vibrant blooms. Guests, a small circle of our dearest friends and family, were seated on white chairs surrounding a flower-adorned archway. Adrian, devastatingly handsome in his dark gray suit, stood at the altar, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. My heart did a little flip. As I walked down the aisle, my father by my side, a surge of love and happiness filled me. Adrian's smile widened. His eyes filled with adoration. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the unconventional way we'd found each other, not the societal expectations we'd brushed aside, not even the brief panic when the ring-bearer's puppy decided to make a run for the rose bushes, quickly retrieved, thankfully. All that mattered was that we were here, together, ready for the next chapter. The ceremony was perfect, a blend of tradition and our own personal touches. We exchanged vows, promising forever. As we slipped the rings on each other's fingers, a symbol of our eternal love, a tear escaped. We were married. Officially. The reception was held in the garden's pavilion, a charming space lit with twinkling lights. Guests mingled, laughing and celebrating. The food was divine, the music lively, and the atmosphere pure joy. As Adrian and I took to the dance floor for our first dance, the music began to play. Our song, a sweet, romantic ballad. We swayed together, lost in each other's eyes. Suddenly, the music shifted. It wasn't our song anymore. It was a fast-paced, upbeat tune. I looked at Adrian, confused. He grinned. "Surprise," he said, and then from behind the bandstand, a group of figures emerged. They were dressed in, well, some rather interesting costumes. They were dressed as characters from our favorite sci-fi series. There was a Klingon, a Jedi Knight, even a Romulan. It was a group of actors, hired by Adrian, dressed as characters from the sci-fi universe we both loved. I gasped, tears welling up in my eyes. I knew Adrian shared my passion for the genre, but I never expected this. He'd found a way to bring our shared love into our wedding celebration. "I wanted to surprise you," Adrian said, his voice filled with love. "I thought it would be a fun way to celebrate our shared passion." My heart overflowed. It was the most thoughtful, most incredible surprise. We danced and laughed with the sci-fi actors, posing for pictures and chatting about our favorite episodes. It was a perfect, unexpected addition to our celebration. The rest of the evening was a blur of laughter, dancing, and heartfelt congratulations. Our friends and family, now joined by our sci-fi guests, celebrated with us. It was a perfect reflection of our quirky, unconventional love story. As the night ended, Adrian and I stood on the dance floor, surrounded by loved ones. We had found each other against all odds, and our wedding, complete with its heartwarming, slightly surreal surprise, was the perfect start to our forever. It was a story that was just beginning. The sun streamed through the windows of our cozy apartment, illuminating the scattered remnants of our honeymoon, postcards, seashells, and a half-empty bottle of champagne. We had just returned from a glorious 2 weeks in the Maldives, a perfect blend of relaxation, adventure, and uninterrupted time together. The memories were still fresh, snorkeling in crystal-clear waters, exploring hidden coves, and simply enjoying the peace and quiet of being a newly married couple. A cheerful text arrived. "I'm so excited for tea and gossip." It was from Yukio, my best friend since college. We'd arranged to meet at our favorite cafe. The cafe buzzed with the happy chatter of patrons and the clinking of teacups. Yukio was already there, waving enthusiastically from a corner table. "You're back," she exclaimed as we approached, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "How was it? Tell me everything." We exchanged warm hugs, then settled into the comfy armchairs. I was practically floating on a cloud of post-honeymoon bliss. "It was perfect," I said, a dreamy smile spreading across my face. "Absolutely perfect." Adrian nodded in agreement. We had an amazing time. It was exactly what we needed after all the wedding planning. Yukio leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. "So, spill the details. What did you do? Where did you go?" We launched into a description of our honeymoon adventures, recounting our snorkeling escapades, our romantic dinners under the stars, and our lazy days spent lounging on the beach. Yukio listened intently, her eyes wide with envy. "It sounds incredible," she said, sighing wistfully. "I'm so happy for you both." "Thank you, Yukio," I said, squeezing her hand. "We're really happy." A thoughtful expression crossed Yukio's face. "You know," she began, "I've been meaning to ask you, how did you two meet, exactly? I know it was unconventional, but I never really got the full story." Adrian and I exchanged a glance, a small smile playing on our lips. It was a story we loved to tell, a story that was both funny and romantic, a testament to the unpredictable nature of love. "Well," Adrian started, "it all began online." We launched into the tale of Iris and Alex, the online personas who had fallen in love before they even knew each other's real identities. We described our witty banter, our shared love for cheesy sci-fi movies, and the deep connection we had forged through countless late-night chats. Yukio listened, her eyes widening with each twist and turn of the story. She laughed, she gasped, and she occasionally shook her head in disbelief. "So, you were basically catfishing each other?" she asked, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Not intentionally," I protested. "We just wanted to be ourselves, without the pressure of our families and expectations. And it worked," Adrian added, wrapping an arm around my shoulder. "It really worked." We continued the story, recounting the moment of revelation, the awkwardness of the family dinner, and the eventual acceptance of our unconventional romance. Yukio was captivated, hanging on every word. "That's the most amazing love story I've ever heard," she said, when we finally finished. "It's like something out of a movie." "It kind of feels like it," I admitted. "Sometimes I still can't believe it's real." "It is real," Adrian said, kissing me softly on the forehead. "And it's just the beginning." We spent the rest of our time at the cafe reminiscing about our wedding, our honeymoon, and our journey together. Yukio was genuinely happy for us, her support and friendship unwavering. As we got up to leave, she gave us both a warm hug. "I'm so glad you found each other," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "You're perfect for each other." "Thanks, Yukio," I said. "We think so too." As we walked out of the cafe, hand in hand, Adrian turned to me, his eyes sparkling. "So," he said, "what do you think? Ready for chapter 2? I smiled, my heart overflowing with love. "Absolutely," I replied. "Let's write it together." The years that followed were a blend of ordinary moments and extraordinary joy. Adrian and I built a life together, filled with love, laughter, and the occasional, but always humorous, debate about the proper way to load a dishwasher. We pursued our careers, supported each other's dreams, and navigated the ups and downs of life as a team. Our families, initially bewildered by our unconventional beginnings, embraced our relationship wholeheartedly. Family dinners became a source of genuine enjoyment, filled with warm conversations and shared stories. The arranged marriage that had once felt like an obligation transformed into a bond of genuine affection and respect. We traveled the world, exploring new cultures, trying new foods, and still disagreeing about pineapple on pizza, and creating memories that would last a lifetime. We built a home filled with warmth and laughter, a sanctuary where we could always be ourselves. And then there were the children. Two beautiful, energetic little humans who inherited both my love for coding and Adrian's, slightly questionable, taste in music. They filled our lives with chaos, joy, and a love that was deeper than anything we had ever imagined. Life wasn't always perfect, of course. There were challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But through it all, our love remained strong, a constant source of comfort and strength. We faced every obstacle together, hand in hand, just as we had promised each other on our wedding day. One evening, years later, as we sat on the porch of our cozy home, watching our children play in the backyard, Adrian turned to me, his eyes filled with love. "Remember that cafe?" he said, a nostalgic smile playing on his lips. I smiled back, remembering the day our lives had changed forever. "How could I forget?" I replied. "It was the best meeting I ever had." He chuckled, pulling me closer. "Me too. It just goes to show, you never know where you'll find love. Even online." We shared a tender kiss, a silent promise of forever. Our love story, born from a childhood betrothal, rekindled through an online connection, and solidified in the real world, was a testament to the power of fate, the magic of love, and the beauty of unexpected journeys. And as we sat there, watching the sun set on another beautiful day, I knew that our story was far from over. It was just beginning, a story that would continue to unfold, chapter by chapter, filled with love, laughter, and happily ever afters. Yukio leaned back, a contented sigh escaping her lips as the final words of Isabella and Adrian's story filled the pages of her book. "Magnifique," she declared. She reached for her notebook, its cover a chaotic collage of mementos, cafe receipts, movie stubs, a faded peony. "Chat room to chapel," she murmured, a smile playing on her lips. "Divine." Memories flooded back. Isabella's frantic retelling of their story, the dramatic reenactments, the shared laughter. Accidental connection, serendipitous reveal, enduring love. Cinematic. Yukio chuckled, picturing the bookstore meet cute, slow motion, at least in Isabella's version. Shared sci-fi novels, perfect. Ever the devoted friend, Yukio had been there, notebook in hand, capturing every detail. Even snagged a few priceless shots of Adrian's bewildered expression as Isabella recounted her Alex chats. Yukio shelved her notebook, adding it to the overflowing shelves that lined the walls behind her. They were testaments to love, friendship, and the internet's surprising magic. Each volume held not just the facts, but Yukio's witty asides, her dramatic flair, her unique take. She was their biographer, their champion, their biggest fan. "Whose story next?" she whispered, her eyes gleaming. She scanned her shelves, a mischievous glint in her eye. Who was ripe for romance? For heartbreak? For a shocking reveal? She tapped her chin. Perhaps. No, too tame. Perhaps. Intriguing. Needs oomph. So many stories, so little time. And so many potential bestsellers. The end. Thanks for hanging out. Hope you had as much fun listening as I did sharing this story. Because wow, that was a ride. If your jaw is still on the floor, don't worry, I'll help you pick it up next time. If you enjoyed the chaos, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. Because trust me, there's always more where that came from.